Thank you, Adam. Good morning, everyone. It's not helpful. Thank you. We'll shut it off when we get into the actual presentations. I joined the MTA just about 11 months ago, and every single day that I've been here, I've done everything I possibly can to make the MTA more efficient and more effective. A couple of different ways in which we've been able to do that. As I've been saying publicly, we are spending less in 2012 than we did in 2011 on our non-discretionary discretionary costs. Excuse me. And I think it's important to note that you won't find, I can't find one at least, a governmental entity here in the state of New York or anywhere in the country who's actually spending less in 2012 than they did in 2011 on this discretionary cost. And that credit, and I give all the credit to the folks at the MTA who've been working under some very difficult conditions with the expansion of the system, the number of riders that we have, the fact that our non-represented employees have not had a base pay increase in over 4 years. Clearly, given the environment in which we're achieving these goals and objectives, is a difficult one for all of our employees, both represented and non-represented. In addition to all that, as you know, last time I stood in front of you here in June, I believe it was late June, we talked about the fact that we're actually, even with all of these cost reductions that are going on, we're actually seeing an improvement in service where we announced $29.5 million of service enhancements. So all at the same time, we're trying to do everything we can for our riders, for our customers, as we possibly can. So one of the things that I've said all along is the fact that we can't control all of our costs. So let me give you a little bit of a background and a little bit, and we can shut the lights off now if you want so that they can see this. A little bit of background of where we stand right now in our budget. And as I've said over and over again, our budget is fragile. It is still fragile. And it's predicated on some very, very interesting assumptions and very, very unique assumptions. First and foremost, we've got a little over $700 million in cost cutting to date, about $780 million. Our 4-year financial plan continues that cost cutting. Every single day we continue our cost cutting, and we're looking to achieve upwards of $1.1 billion a year in recurring savings in our 4-year financial plan by 2015. Our budget still includes a labor agreement of 3 years of net zeros, and also our budget also includes fare and toll increases in 2013 and 2015. I'm here today to talk about the 2013 increase. That increase will generate $450 million of annualized additional revenues for us. So when you look at what's happened, and as I said, it's our non-discretionary expenses that are growing at rates faster than the rate of inflation. Those costs that we can control are below, this year, are below what they were last year, which is negative 0.3%, even though it was budgeted to be actually higher. We're actually achieving negative growth on our non-discretionary costs. But on the left side shows the year-over-year increases. The right side shows the compounded annual growth rate in our financial plan, in our 4-year financial plan. Pensions year over the year have grown expenses 19.3%. There's been a reduction in the investment return by the actuaries for the controllers as well as our own actuaries, requiring us to make that 19.3% increase. On top of that, we're showing in our financial plan, after that increase in the base, an average annual growth over the next 4 years of 6.4%. Employee health care has grown 5.6%. We're looking at growth in the out years of 8.4%. Energy, we're maintaining at a 5.2% growth. You cannot run the railroads or the subway system or the bus system without energy. The fact we need the electricity, we need the diesel fuel, two very, very volatile areas of the marketplace, but we're going to maintain it in our budget at 5.2%. Paratransit is growing at in double digits, greater than 10%. Even though we're seeing a significantly greater than 10% increase in eligible users of paratransit and riders of paratransit in the disabled community, what we are doing to keep that cost under control. Believe it or not, that growth would be closer to 19 or 20% if we didn't change the per unit cost. And the per unit cost is being changed because we're shifting the use of paratransit from the vans to various different voucher car services, it cuts the per unit cost of $63 to $64 in half. And then finally, we have debt service increases, almost 10% in this year, growing at a little bit above 9% in the out years. And what I'd like to show you is that when you look at our discretionary costs, and if I can just point to you here, this is the incremental increase over 2011. It's going up $539 million. It's going up an incremental upwards of $1 billion in 2013. We're experiencing $1 billion increase in year-over-year incremental increase in our non-discretionary expenses. 1/3 of which is going to be paid for by our riders, 2/3 of which will be paid for by continued reductions here at the MTA, continued increases in the economic activity of the area, therefore increases in subsidy. We will continue to see that growth in the incremental cost all the way through. The far right column, which is $4.992, $5 billion, that's not total non-discretionary cost, that's incremental non-discretionary cost. Is going to grow $5 billion over our financial plan, 1/3 of which, or 35% of which, is coming from the fare and toll increases. The remaining 2/3 coming from actions taken by the MTA as well as increased economic activity. In spite of all of what we're talking about and what we're doing with the fare and toll increases, and I believe that the reason why we're having fare and toll increases is directly related to the increase in our non-discretionary costs. Our non-discretionary costs are growing at such a rate that we have no choice but to raise our fares. Even with that, we will be showing in November, at our November board meeting, we'll be coming out with our new preliminary budget for 2013, as well as the financial plan for the 4 years thereafter. We're still showing certain out-year deficits in 2014 and 2016. Now, these out-year gaps that we're showing you are also predicated on us receiving a labor settlement of 3 years of net zero. It's predicated on us receiving or actually achieving $1.1 billion in further reductions in our expenses and eliminating the inefficiencies that we find within the MTA. What's important here is that we do still have these out-year gaps in spite of this. It continues to put the pressure on me and everyone who manages the MTA to keep our eye on the ball, because we must continue to do everything we can to make our place as efficient and as effective as possible. So let's go into the fare and toll increases specifically. Let's start with the New York City Transit Authority. You know, we have some basic questions that we need to ask as we go into a fare and toll increase. The fare and toll increase, first question should be, should the base fare remain the same? Should the base fare go up? Our current base fare is $2.25. And I'll be going through this in more detail in the next couple of slides. We have discounts. We have 3 different ways in which you can get discounts. You can buy a monthly pass, you can buy a weekly pass, or you can buy a bonus pass. The monthly pass is currently $104. The weekly pass is currently $29. And the bonus card, for if you buy a Metro card of $10 or more, you get a 7% discount. So if you put $10 into the machine, the card reads $10.70. Should we just do an increase completely across the board and affect everyone in one way or the other, or do we want to really impact the people who ride who use the system the most? And then finally, really comes to the question, who should be impacted the most? Those who do the discounted or those who do the non-discounted fares? We have some demographic data to go over with you. And I'll start with what we know is based on the number of trips made overall. Only 15% of our riders actually pay $2.25. Or more importantly, 85% of the trips taken on the subway system and the bus system do so at a discounted rate. And as you can see from the pie chart, the bonus card at 38% is the highest category, followed by the 30-day card at 31%, and followed by the 7-day at 16%. I think it's really important, and I can't overemphasize enough, that the majority of people, not just the majority, a significant majority of people, 85% of all of the trips taken on the subways and the buses in New York City are done so at less than $2.25, are done at an overall discounted rate. The next area of demographic data I'd like to talk to you about is by income group. We do various different surveys. This survey was done a little 2 years ago or thereabouts, less than that actually. It was a telephone survey that was done where we asked folks based on their economic category, what was their family's gross income, how did you use and how do you access the subway. For those folks who have a gross income of $25,000, family income of $25,000 or less, those who are the most economically disadvantaged in our society, 61% of all of those riders actually use a discounted fare. 39% actually use the base fare. These numbers, by the way, are based on not including tourists, these particular numbers, because we did this as a telephone interview of households here in New York City. So it's important to understand that one of our focuses is going to be how do we get folks from that 39% into the discounted category, and we'll talk more about that later. In the 25 to 50,000 category, the number goes up to 73% of those rides in that category. Still, I think, in an economically disadvantaged category, but the majority, the significant majority, almost 3/4 of the folks in that category and the families in that category actually travel using a discounted fare. And as you go all the way over to the right to the higher income categories, it shouldn't surprise anyone that those categories use the lowest number of the per unit ride at $2.25. We then took that same data based on the telephone interviews and we asked folks based on frequency. How many trips do you take a week? How many trips did you take in the last week? This will change based on the week and the month. August is a big vacation, July and August are big vacation months. But we asked them to generally say how, based on the number of trips this week, how do you actually pay? And you can actually see if people are taking 1 to 3 trips, yes, they are using the non-discounted fare. Those are the discretionary, once in a while type trips. They have no desire to have a weekly fare or anything like that. As you grow up on the pie charts over to the right, you can see that, if people are taking 16 plus trips a week, the combination of the 30-day, which is at 57%, a combination of the 7-day, which is at 14%, combined with the bonus at 16%. 87% of the people who are taking all of those trips, 16 plus trips, are actually doing so on a discounted basis. The point I want to get across as I go through all of this data is for you to understand that most people don't pay $2.25. And it's really important to understand that most people do take advantage of the various different discounting options that the Transit Authority provides for them. So what happened 2 years ago when the MTA did the fare and toll increase? Let me go through that and review for you what happened 2 years ago before we talk about what the options will be going forward. 2 years ago, the fare and toll increase stayed at $2.25. 2 years before that, in 2009, it increased from $2 to $2.25. But 2 years ago, it stayed the same. The bonus went down from 15% to 7%. The 30-day pass went from $89 to $104. And there was very, very strong support for maintaining the unlimited pass. There was strong discussion at all of the public hearings about, well, why don't you just cap a pass, or why don't you have a different type of pass with a cap on it or a limited amount? Quite honestly, the public was a resounding no. So let me again go over in the first column what we currently pay and then go through the options. But before we start, let me talk about the options. The options are here to provide the public with an opportunity to participate in the fare-making decision process. What's really important, and I believe it's the definition of transparency, we shouldn't just come out and say, this is what the fare and toll increase is going to be, come have a public hearing about it. I want to have a public hearing that's quite honestly based on core information. And what you see here are, within the various different categories, 2 different proposals with some certain differences. Proposal 1, which is broken out in 1A and 1B, is really talking about increasing the base fare for those 15% of the users that actually use the base fare, 51% of the rides from $225 to $250. Proposal 2 is to actually keep the fare at the base fare at $225. But let me review for you now where we are currently, so you can understand where we are currently and where we can go. Currently, our base fare is $2.25. Our express bus fare is $5.50. We have a 7% bonus discount for anyone who gives $10 or more. That actually brings the per unit ride down to $2.10. We have a 30-day pass at $104. At $104, the break-even rate is 50 trips. That's based on the bonus fare rate. Any trip above 50 is free. Right now, the 30-day pass users, on average, take 60 trips. So on average, most people are making out and paying a per unit charge that's even lower. And you know that they must be, because we've said this over and over again. The amount of revenue that we receive per ride is $1.63. So you're going to see that the discounts are dominant in this economic process. The 7-day pass, it's $29, 14 trips, 2 trips a day, 7 days a week, at which point you break even. Any trip above that is actually break even, and I believe, Bill, where are you? Bill, the break even for the 7-day trip, I believe, is 19, not 19, but the average user, it's 19 or 20 trips. So the average user is actually making out ahead with the 7-day trips. So let me go through the proposals, but also let me tell you the proposals are not definitive. And what I mean by that is that the proposals are giving a range, a high and a low. The board has the option to do anything in between any of these proposals. So what these proposals are doing is setting parameters for what the board will be making a decision on. So let's go through Proposal 1A. Proposal 1A is to increase the base fare from $225 to $250. It's to maintain the bonus fare at 7%, being able to generate the revenue necessary to hit our goal, and I'll talk about what our goals are in a second. But to generate that, it would increase the 30-day pass from $104 to $112. It would increase the 7-day pass from $29 to $30. It also will reduce the break-evens for both of them as well. But that's assuming that we keep we keep the bonus fare at the same rate. Proposal 1B, as I said, is an extreme. Let's say we eliminated the bonus altogether. If we eliminated the bonus altogether, and anybody who normally puts on $10 into a machine actually gets $10 worth of value, in that case, the 30-day pass would go up by $5 from $104 to $109, and the break-even would drop to 44 trips, which is the lowest break-even we believe that we've had since we've created the MetroCard. And the 7-day pass would stay at $29, and the break-even would actually go down by 12. Let me give you as a rule of thumb what would happen for every point or reduction in the amount of the 7% discount. It's worth about $1 on the 30-day pass. So if by chance we went from the proposal ended up being we went from a 7% discount to a 5% discount, still allowing the bonus purchases to get a 5% discount, the 30-day pass would be $110. It would go down by $2 since we went down by 2 percentage points. And the 7-day pass actually would stay at $30. It would go up by 1. So in that case, you'd see it in a 5% discount, you'd go from $104 to $110 or up by $6. Early on in the process, I told you about the fact that we were looking to generate $450 million of additional revenue. Let me give you the breakdown by the operating agencies. I should have done this at the beginning of the presentation. Of the amounts that we have, it's $277 million for the Transit Authority, $78 million for the commuter railroads, and the final amount is $102 million for bridges and tunnels. Those are the annualized rates that grow to $450 million. When you look at that, though, in comparison to where you'll see in the financial statements, recall we're holding off the fare increase from January 1 by 60 days to March 1. Therefore, those numbers you need to take 10/12 of those numbers to see the amount that'll be in the budget. They're slightly lower, but we look at everything on an annualized basis. All four of these proposals are there to generate $277 million. Proposals 2A are the proposals that I mentioned to you, is to keep the fare at $225. By doing that, it'll increase our discounted fares an extraordinary amount. If by chance we looked at the bonus value and reduced it to 5% to achieve the $277 million in additional revenue, the 30-day pass would have to go up to $125, and the 7-day pass would have to go up to $34. On the extreme of just eliminating the bonus altogether, $225, no bonus for $10 or more, the base fare, the 30-day pass would go up to $119, and the 7-day pass would go up to $32. So you see, what's in the scheme here is showing two different ranges. The board needs to make a decision. Should the base fare stay at $225, which impacts the least number of our riders, significant number of our riders, generally 85% of them take advantage of either the bonus or the 30-day or the 7-day. Only 15% of our rides actually pay the base fare. And so we need to really weigh against the other. What do we do to continue to increase our ridership? What do we do for the majority of our riders in trying to minimize the increase? And I can't overemphasize enough the desire to minimize the increase. It's not easy to be up here because of, in this process, but this was something that has been in the works since 2009, when there was a bailout of the MTA by the state legislature. There was an agreement, or at least an acknowledgement on the part of the governor at that time, as well as the majority leader and the speaker at that time, that the MTA would embark on increases biennially or every other year. My hope is that the economy will grow by leaps and bounds, so I'm not here 24 months from now doing the same thing again, so we can show it. But if it doesn't, and if the economy stays at where we are, if the amount of subsidies that we receive from Albany don't increase, unfortunately, what was acknowledged back in 2009 will actually happen, that we will be going through this. I'll be able to answer any questions on all of these charts at the very end. For the commuter rail is a little bit easier to do and easier to calculate. Unlike the subway system, the commuter rail system is distance-based pricing. It's not an all-you-can-eat subway ride where you pay the same amount whether you're going from one borough to another, or all 5 boroughs are just going somewhere within the borough that you live in. It's distance-based pricing. All the prices are set off the peak fare. And in fact, the off-peak fare is 75% of the peak fare. It is extremely formulaic in how the commuter rails, both the Long Island Railroad and Metro North, are priced. And we also price them for ease of, you can also buy your ticket on the train. We ease it so that it's in a 25-cent increment, making it easier so that the conductors aren't carrying a whole lot of change. The average fare increase overall between the Long Island with the Long Island Railroad and Metro North is going up anywhere from 8.2 to 9.3%. In the charts that you were handed out, it may be very hard to read, but this gives you examples of where the increases are going and how much they're going up, what's current and what's proposed. You can see they're based by zone and they're based by distance. If you haven't received this already, you will be receiving information, our brochure that we put out in connection with this. This brochure will have more detail on the commuter railroads. Finally, bridges and tunnels. 70% of all of our bridges and tunnels, folks are using E-ZPass, some more than others. Verrazano Bridge is in the high 80%. The Henry Hudson Bridge is also probably over 90% at this time. Our E-ZPass tolls is considerably less than our cash toll. And then further, we have discounts for the folks in the Rockaways who live in the Rockaways, and we have a significant discount for the folks who live on Staten Island because they have no other way of getting off that island other than but when they're with the car, other than by going over a bridge. And most importantly, the Staten Island fare today is $5.76. When you go through, now that's a round trip. Staten Island is the only one of our major thoroughfares where you don't pay one way, you actually pay 2 ways. That was as a response to federal legislation that required it be one way. 55% discount is given to the folks who live on Staten Island, so they pay a round trip of $5.76, less than $3 a trip when they go over. Now, I realize how controversial the fares are and the stated fares are on Staten Island, but the fact of the matter is I've yet to meet anyone from Staten Island who pays $13. They all have easy passes. In fact, last time I looked, there were more easy passes on Staten Island than there were cards registered at the Department of Motor Vehicles. So I really feel comfortable in knowing that the people in Staten Island are in fact paying $5.76. At the core of our increases in bridges and tunnels is our recommendation that the cash toll for our major bridges, the RFK, which is formerly known as the Triborough, the Throgs Neck, the Whitestone, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, which is now known as the UL Cary Tunnel, and the Queens Midtown Tunnel, which is yet to be named, but we'll find somebody, I'm sure. That the toll is going, the recommendation is going up by $1 from $6.50 to $7.50. Easy Pass, however, is only going up 50 cents. It's going up by half the amount, from $4.80 to $5.30 for those who have a New York Easy Pass. Verrazano is also going up by $1 one way, but since we collect round trip, it's going from $13, it's going up to $15. We're maintaining the very deep discount for the Staten Island residents, where it's going from $5.76 to $6.36. The Henry Hudson Bridge is also going up by $1. We have some of the minor bridges, the Marine Parkway Gil Hodges Memorial Bridge in Queens, as well as the Cross Bay Veterans Bridge in Queens, and their cash toll is going up by 50 cents, and overall the Easy Pass toll is going up by 19 cents. That is our presentation for you today. I do want to talk about the fact that we are having public hearings sometime between the election and New Year's, depending on where you live and what county and what part of the region you live in. As it's in the presentation, we'll be out on the island as well as in Brooklyn on November 7th, Manhattan and the Bronx on November 13th, Newburgh, New York, and Staten Island, New York on November 14th, as well as Westchester County and the Borough of Queens on November 15th. We are also having 4 video sites, which we've never had before. I want to increase participation. We all want to increase participation. Not everybody can express their opinion to us about what their thoughts are and where we should go in this public discussion about fare and toll increases. We're having 2 on Long Island, 1 in Hicksville, 1 in Ronkonkoma at the railroad stations out there, in Poughkeepsie at the Metro North Station, and in the borough of Manhattan, where it's going to be opened down at the Transit Authority headquarters on the side on Stone Street from the headquarters there at 2 Broadway. What's important to understand in this whole process is the MTA is trying to do everything it can to make itself efficient and as effective as possible. We understand that we're here to serve our customers. We understand that we're here to serve our riders. And our riders are responding because our ridership levels are at the highest levels on the weekdays since 1950 and the highest level on the weekends since 1947. We want to keep the fare increase and limit it to as much as possible. The only way that we won't be able to do that is if we get to see any increased subsidies coming from Albany. With that, I'll open it up to some questions and answers.
Can I ask that when you ask the question, please hit the button on your microphone here so the webcast and TV can pick you up. You'll know it when the red light comes on.
Green light, red light.
Go ahead.
1, 2, 3.
Yes, sir.
Joe, you say 15%, only 15% of riders use the base
Of
fare.
trips, 15% of trips. We count every time someone swipes through with using a Metro card. And the only way you get on is by swiping. Based on that, only 15% of the rides pay that fare.
Well, you have several million swipes a day, and so 15% would be, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So the question is, how many of those?
Well, I have 5 million riders a day.
Right.
All right, 15% of those would be paying. And what I need to do, more than anything else, depending on what this, I need to figure out how to get that 15% down significantly. That 15% also includes tourists. It also includes people who are visiting New York for the first time. It's not just residents. So when you look at that and you look at whatever proposals are debated and whatever proposals are decided and put before the board in this room in December, I need to go over that timing as well, so you know when the decisions are going to be made. But when that happens, it is important that from my point of view, I need to be held accountable for having an education program. It shouldn't be 15%. It should be significantly lower than that. 61% of the people who, the number of riders who make $25,000 or less can buy a discounted pass. Well, it's important for me to educate the remainder of that group so that they don't have to pay the full amount. I don't want them to. My job is to increase ridership on the subways, to increase ridership on the buses, and to make it as easy and as easy as I can for them to get on and off.
I guess the question I was getting at is, regardless of the percentage, there are tens of thousands of people who, for whatever reason, and in many cases economic reasons, 6 doctor trips a month or whatever it may be, use the base fare, and for them, the $20 a month more may make a huge difference. What do you say to the poorest riders in the system?
I'm not sure how you got the $20 a month more.
Whatever amount of trips more, if the base fare rises, they will have an increase. Say they do.
If you think about it, 6 trips, assuming you want 3 round trips or 6 round trips.
Let's say 6.
6 round trips, that's $1.50 more per month, not $20 more per month. So let's be really specific about the numbers. We're talking about $1.50 more per month for 6 trips. And I think that's important. Do I want to do that? No, but I do very much believe that I need to get as many of those per user riders to get the discount. Even if they put $10 down, they'll get a discount. They'll get, a 7% discount, a 5% discount, some level of discount. Obviously I've put proposals up there that show no discount. I've heard the public loud and clear. I think that there's still going to be a discount of some sort or another. I'm convinced of that, and I'll be making recommendation to the board at that level or in that regard. But I do think it's important for me to find a way to educate folks to understand how they do that. I also want to talk about the weekly and the monthly for 1 second. I've anecdotally, just talking to folks, I ask them, why don't you buy the monthly pass? Well, I always forget on the first day of the month. Really have to understand, you can buy a monthly pass whenever you want. It doesn't start the 30-day count until you first swipe. And so you can buy it on any time that you want. You should also know that we're testing various different methods at this time. I'm hearing feedback. Hello, can you hear me? With pleasure. That better? Thanks. Sorry. I heard the feedback as well. So what's important about the 30-day and the 7-day, the 30-day is not predicated on buying it on the first day of the month. You can buy it whenever you want. Right now down in Lower Manhattan, we're testing out new readers that'll tell you how many days you have left. You'll see that down at the Battery when you swipe through with the new MetroCard readers. That's important to have, and that's important to show our riders. It's also all part of the customer service because people don't remember what date they bought it or when they're going to run out and all that. And the same is true for the 7-day pass. The 7-day pass can be bought on any day of the week. It doesn't start when you buy it. It starts at your first swipe. And it's important to understand that. That goes to the education that is important that the MTA start and develop in connection with having our riders understand how it can work. Yes, Esme.
Hi. I was wondering if this plan assumes that the MTA payroll tax appeal will be successful.
Oh yes, it does. Does the PM if the PMT look? I'm going to be optimistic and I believe that the PMT case will be held. Will be overturned, that the unconstitutional nature that was put together, that was part of the opinion from the Supreme Court in Nassau County will be overturned. We're not expecting the results of that decision probably until potentially after March 1st. I have to have a fare increase on March 1st. It's predicated on us being successful. If we're not, we'll be back to you.
Back here. I just wanted to clarify. You said that you plan to recommend that the discount remain intact in some capacity?
I did say that.
Okay.
I did say that. I've come to the conclusion after my speech at Cranes where I threw that balloon out. I think someone today it went over, said, Pete, what did you say? It went over like a lead balloon today? Something like that. It wasn't as bad as a lead balloon, but not as nice as that balloon that took that guy up into space to jump out, which every now and then I feel like doing in this job. Yeah, I've come to the opinion that the riders really like the discount, and I think it will be maintained. But I'm only one board member, but I will recommend one.
I would say that, 2 out of the 4 proposals don't have any discount.
Right.
So the other 2 remaining, which do you prefer?
I actually prefer something in between, which is why I described that they are parameters. They are on one end and the other end. I think it'll be less than 7% and greater than a bread box.
Which of these plans is projected to bring in the most money for the MTA?
I'm sorry?
Which of these plans is projected to bring in the most money?
Each
for the
one of
MTA?
these plans brings in the same amount of money to the MTA. Each one of these plans would develop so that they bring in the same amount of money to the MTA. It's mathematical equation. There's some elasticity that some people move from one group to another group. Based on our history and understanding how it all works, we feel relatively comfortable. We feel very comfortable with the model. But each one of those 4 proposals will generate $277 million, which is the target, the annual target for the Transit Authority. Yes?
Sir, I don't mean this to sound like a quiz. Do you know what the monthly ticket is from Ronkonkoma to Penn Station, just offhand?
I don't know what it is from Ronkonkoma to...
It's a big number now, and that's the reason I bring it up.
Yeah, they are big numbers. I am aware of that. The numbers that actually come in from out in the island are very, very big.
It's over $300. I know that.
Oh, sure.
I know,
I don't doubt that. We have the commuter passes from the longest parts of the island or the parts in upstate New York. I mean, Beacon, New York, for example, is over $400. I realize that. It breaks down. It's about a 50% discount from what the per-day fare would be. And you should also know that even with those fares at those dollar amounts, based on distance, the amount of distance that they go, each one of those fares still don't generate enough for the Long Island Railroad to break even. The Long Island Railroad still needs a little over 50% subsidy coming from the state of New York.
And the reason I ask that, and I don't want to belabor this, is that it's a big number. So when you're talking about an 8% increase or a 9% increase for those commuter rail lines, those people are going to look at it and say that you're trying to keep the New York City transit fares lower by raising prices on the presumably better-heeled suburban customers. What would your answer be to that?
Well, quite actually, the fact that they'll say that, I believe it. The fact that it's a true statement is absolutely false. No part of Long Island monies go to subsidize the subway system. Absolutely zero. In fact, I would argue that more subsidies per rider go to the Long Island Railroad, and that's what the numbers show, is that more subsidy goes to the Long Island Railroad rider than goes to the New York City subway rider. Let me give you an example. Right now, when you look at the fare operating ratio, and the fare operating ratio is defined as taking fare revenues and dividing them through by operating expenses. When you look at that, the fares on the subway system generate 71% of their operating costs. The fares on the Long Island Railroad generate 48.7%. 52% of the subsidy that comes into the Long Island Railroad comes from the state of New York, and the subway system only 28% comes in from the state of New York. Anybody who believes that the Long Island Railroad or the Metro North Railroad are subsidizing the subway system or the bus system is completely wrong and is false information. This information's been on our website for as long as we've had a website. I know that there's this fiction that exists out there that Long Island Railroad will subsidize. It is absolutely false. It is absolutely not true.
Given what you just said, and the fact that suburban legislatures are trying to eliminate the PMT, why not raise fares on commuter railroads more than 8 to 9%, especially if they succeed in cutting the PMT and depriving you of $1.8 billion.
There's two parts to your question. There's what if there was a reduction in PMT. Let's address that when it happens. When there was a last reduction in PMT, actually it was a raising of the threshold amount, which reduced the amount that would come into the MTA by $350 million. Governor Cuomo came to our rescue and said, I will make you whole with that. He incorporated it in his budget so that in spite of the fact that the PMT, the amount of the PMT that was paid went down, the governor made us whole. I will address that later, but I won't in any way, shape, or form penalize anyone because of what their legislators want to do one way or the other. That's not fair at all. And so I don't even want to engage in that kind of discussion. I think it's not good thinking.
You mentioned 2015 and the possibility that some action by Albany might make that future fare increase not necessary. Talk about the regular fare increases as they're planned now. Is this part of how the MTA should be operating, that fairly regularly you come together, you make these calculations, and you do an increase in what riders pay? Or is it something that could be, it sounded like you said, that could be prevented by Albany stepping up with a new revenue stream?
I think that what I said wasn't just an increase in Albany coming to the table. It was an increase if we see a increase in economic activity similar to what happened during the 1980s. There wouldn't be the need for a fare and toll increase because we would see those taxes that would go up and therefore cover types of costs. In answer to the question about, when the same statistics, when you look at the overall operating statistics for the MTA as a whole, when you combine the railroads and the bus system and the subway system together, our fare operating ratio is at about 52%, meaning 48% is coming from the state. When you look at that compared to MBTA, which is in the 30% range, I'll get you the exact numbers, or WMATA, which is in the 40% range, our subsidy per rider is the lowest in the country. It's important for me, it's important for all of us to work with our legislature to find ways to have them understand that New York shouldn't be the lowest. That being said, it's my job, it's the management's job at the MTA to make sure that we're as efficient as possible. I don't want to give Albany, legislators in Albany, an opportunity to say that we haven't done our share. We have to do our share. And then we can go to Albany and look in a partnership to say, what do we do on behalf of our riders, your constituents, for what happens with the fare increase? If that doesn't happen, as was determined in 2009 by then Governor Patterson, Speaker Silver, and Majority Leader Sampson, thank you, sorry. It was decided that there would be biennial increases. And it would be a good idea. It would be nice if that didn't happen. But right now, that's the reality that I have to work within. Matt?
If you succeed in educating the public to get off the single pay, and let's say it's down to 10 or even 5%, does that affect the math at all?
Yeah, and that math is incorporated in what we've been thinking about. It does affect the math, but you know what? It's not over. When you run a $12.5 to $13 billion budget, there can be way behind the decimal point errors in assessments on what it will be, but it will not affect our finances one bit. In fact, I think it will encourage what I think is our number one job, and that is to encourage more and more riders, to encourage riders to use the subways, to use the buses, to use the commuter rails, get out of cabs, get out of cars, and really help not just the overall, help the entire city, both environmentally and culturally. Yes? I can hear you.
You said that you would be inclined to recommend not getting rid of the bonus. How about when it comes to the increases on the 30-day or the 7-day cards? Speaking to people, do you think that there are better ideas there?
I think anything we do, there's an interplay between what we do on the discount and what we do on the 30-day and the 60-day. I mean, going up $6, $5 on a 30-day pass. The per trip is like 20 cents. I mean, I think that's more palatable, I think, from a sales point of view. But what I'd like to do is get New Yorkers to pay the least amount they possibly can to take a subway or a bus trip. Hello, Ronkonkoma.
Can you talk about the decision to have the fare increases pretty cut and dry on the railroad versus some of the gimmickry we've seen in the past with penalty fees and expiration dates and some of that? I know it didn't go over well last time. This time it seems it's pretty cut and dry. Can you talk a bit about that?
I wasn't here when that happened, but anybody who knows me knows, first off, I don't like gimmickry. I find it more confusing than not. But no, it's to be pretty straightforward and cut and dry. It's the best way to deal with it.
Chairman, one of the things I hear a lot out there when I talk to people is that the fare is too high. Is that something that you hear when you talk to people, and what do you say to them when they say that?
Actually, when I talk to people, some people think the fare is too high. Most people don't think it's too high. Most people talk to me about cleanliness. They talk to me how much they like the countdown clocks and the other travel information that's been put out there. Those are, that's there. I mean, when you look at how much, and no New Yorker likes to compare themselves to other cities. I don't blame them. I don't like that either. But when you look at the cost of our subway compared to the Underground in London, who we're compared to globally, we are significantly less. If you're going in downtown London, which is distance-based pricing, from one part of the central business district to another, after you convert it from pounds to dollars, it's over $8. Look at how much it costs in Washington, D.C. to commute from Arlington, Virginia down to K Street. It's $6. To compare, $5.75. To compare, and I realize that. No, as I said, no New Yorker likes to be compared to another city. But at $2.25 or a discounted fare of $2.10 or an average fare of $1.63, I don't think they're looking in perspective of what other transportation networks are. And I also don't think they understand that, this is there's no transportation network in this country that works just on fares. But the subway fare rider in New York pays more for their subway ride than any other subway rider anywhere else in the country, be it Chicago or Washington or Atlanta or Philadelphia or Los Angeles and their new subway system, San Francisco and theirs, or BART. We pay more at the fare box than anyone else. That I agree with.
Anyone who hasn't had a question yet?
Tina.
Chairman, I just wanted to make sure, in the proposals that you're putting forward, would the fare operating ratio stay the same, where New York City riders are actually paying 71% of their cost of their ride versus the commuter areas?
It won't change. It won't change that significant. There may be something behind the decimal point. Remember, it's fares as a percentage of fare operating ratio. I can do the calculation for you, but it's not going to
be significant. So
it's not going to be significant. It's not going to go up. It's not going to go down.
So then, why should subway and bus riders have to subsidize 71? Why should they be paying 71% of the cost, whereas Long Island, LIR, and Metro North only covers?
Well, let me be specific. I didn't talk about buses. Buses have subsidized the least. They're the most inefficient form of our transportation system. New York City buses are at 36.6% paid for at the fare box. The remainder is paid for with subsidies. Long Island Railroad is at 48.7. Metro North is at 59.3, and the New York City subway system is at 71.7.
But you already said that you wanted to make sure that New York City riders are paying the least amount that they have to.
I didn't say that.
Or something
I didn't say
those.
that. In connection with the fare operating ratio, the conversation there is nothing more than looking at us on a per-rider basis compared to other transportation systems in the country. I can't benchmark. That's just a simple benchmark that's put together by the U.S. Department of Transportation. I think it's important to understand that I put it out there because the question was asked, what do you say to people in the Long Island Railroad who believe that they're subsidizing the subway system? I put these statistics out to show that it's not the case. It is absolutely no amount of money from the Long Island Railroad goes to the New York City Transit Authority, whether it's to the bus system or to the subway system.
Conversely, though, New York City riders could say, hey, these other commuters are getting a much better deal than we are.
I think it's a function of the amount of money and the amount of subsidy that comes from the state, and it's important to understand that. You also have to look at it on a, I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I also think that's not a good way to look at it. I don't think it's the right way to look at it. I think the right way is everybody runs on their own. The amount of subsidy that we take from the state, it's a function of the operating expenses. The operating expenses, the flip side you could say is the operating expenses per rider is more on the Long Island Railroad than it is on the subway system. That's an absolute fact. So you have to look at it in toto. You just can't isolate it and point one statistic against another. You have to look at the entire system and how it operates.
Chairman, there are some reports out there that there's one of these plans that's more likely to pass than the others. Is there one that's more favored by the board?
I don't know. We've had some briefings of the board, about 5 different briefings of the board. Didn't ask them their opinion. The process is going to be, this information is out today. It'll be on our website later this afternoon. The brochures, that'll be made available to our riders. Posters that'll go up in the systems will all be up today and tomorrow. Hearings in between the election and Thanksgiving, and the board will deliberate immediately after the hearings, but in time for the December board meeting. So I actually think as part of the public discussion, I purposely haven't asked the board what direction they're going in. Hopefully they're like me. I want to listen to the public and then make a decision. So we're not there yet.
Last one.
Tiwa.
A lot of times when we go out on these stories, we go out and do MOS, talk to random unscientific surveys of people in the subways and buses. And one of the things that I get a lot when I talk
MOS? Man on the street?
POS, person on the street.
Person on the street?
Or the
I
subway.
got it. When I
Person
hear
on the
MOS,
subway.
I think of member of service.
Public in the
Probably my
subway.
police background. I'm
PIS.
sorry.
In any case, when we ask people just randomly and say, the fare's going up, universally, it's, oh, I can't stand. But one thing I hear a lot is, will the service get better with these increases? That's what we hear a lot. People say, well, the service, it's getting worse.
Not Tiwa, you saw.
No, what I'm asking is that under any of these proposals, will the service get better?
Absolutely. And the service, we've put out various different reports lately. Even Gene Rushinoff said that our communication with our riders is better than it's ever been. I mean, that you can hear on the subways, and that the types of information that are put out there. I take that as a tremendous level of pride when Straphanger says good things about the subway system. It's indicative of what's happening in the subway system. It is in fact cleaner. It is in fact more efficient. Fast Track, which will be on the West Side IRT tonight, the 2 and the 3, it's keeping the stations cleaner and more effective and not breaking down anywhere near what it used to break down. It is a better system. People who believe that, sorry? Oh, no, I know. Sorry, I'm being part of everything that we're doing is to take the existing system as we have today and make it better, and we're doing that every single day. In addition to that, we were only here just 2 or 3 months ago talking about expanded service. And the expanded service isn't just putting back what was partially cut or cut in 2010. We're actually putting back where people are living now in Williamsburg and other parts of Brooklyn and the Bronx that never had bus traffic before or never had the ability to get to a subway stop. So the bottom line is, yes, the man on the street or the person on the street may say that, but I think if you did a scientific survey, you'd find just the opposite. But enjoy yourself.
Thank you all. We're going to, in a moment, bring up Nuria Fernandez, our Chief Operating Officer. She's going to give some brief points in Spanish for Spanish language media.
Buenos días. En estos últimos 12 meses nos hemos centrado en hacer que la Autoridad Metropolitana de Transporte opere lo más eficiente posible, Hemos recortado más de 700 millones de nuestro presupuesto operativo anual y estamos encaminados a gastar menos en los costos discrecionales este año comparado con el nivel del año pasado. También nos hemos enfocado en mejorar el servicio en nuestra red de transporte. Este verano, como se pueden acordar, presentamos una serie de inversiones en nuevos servicios de metro, autobús y ferrocarril por un costo de 29,5 millones para brindar otras operaciones de servicio a nuestros usuarios durante los días laborables y fines de semana y para proveer una mejor conexión a las comunidades que servimos. Estamos pendientes de mejorar el servicio de nuestros trenes y autobuses y la condición de nuestras estaciones, así como la manera en que nos comunicamos con nuestros usuarios y los comentarios positivos que recibimos en las encuestas sobre nuestro servicio. Pero como mencionamos anteriormente, aquellos costos que no podemos controlar por cosas como el cuidado de la salud, las pensiones, el servicio a los discapacitados, etcétera, siguen creciendo más rápido que la tasa de inflación. Estamos lidiando con medidas a largo plazo para reducir estos costos no discrecionales, pero por el momento estos siguen siendo los motores que están detrás de este incremento de tarifas y peajes. El plan financiero de la Autoridad Metropolitana de Transporte supone aumentos de tarifas y peajes cada 2 años. Hoy se explicó cómo se propone recaudar 450 millones en ingresos anuales a comienzo de marzo del año entrante. Y se explicó las opciones que enfrenta la Junta Directiva de la autoridad al respecto. Con la ayuda del público vamos a dar forma a nuestra política de tarifas y hoy se presentó una serie de propuestas que fueron diseñadas para balancear la necesidad de aumentar la tarifa y los ingresos de peaje con opciones que el público puede considerar aceptables. Llevaremos a cabo una serie de audiencias públicas sobre varias propuestas y vamos a considerar modificarlas basado a los comentarios y lo que vayamos a aprender. Ahora permítame explicar cómo el presupuesto se verá balanceado estos próximos años. Como explicó el presidente Lhota, vamos a empezar primero con las propuestas. La propuesta va a mantener la tarifa base y lo que va a cambiar es las diferentes opciones que se van a presentar al respecto. Con las propuestas tenemos 4 etiquetas, la etiqueta 1A, 1B, 2A y 2B, que difieren en la forma en que se va a tratar la tarifa base, con el MetroCard basado en el tiempo ilimitado de los viajes, algunos de las tarifas de descuento del 7% que reciben los clientes que introducen más de $10 en un pago por tarjeta, y la tarifa base actual de $2.25, que efectivamente es de $2.10 con el descuento del bono. El costo actual de una tarjeta limitada de 30 días es de $104. Una tarjeta de 7 días limitada cuesta $29. Según la primera propuesta, la tarifa base se elevaría a $2.50. Bajo la etiqueta 1A, el bono de descuento se mantendría sin cambios con un descuento proporcionado, una tarifa por viaje de $2.34. Según esta propuesta, la tarjeta de 30 días se elevaría de $112 y el de 7 días subiría a $30. Bajo la propuesta 1B, el bono de descuento será eliminada, pero los aumentos en cuanto a la base de la tarjeta serían de menor cantidad. La tarjeta de 30 días se elevaría a 109 y el de 7 días se mantendría sin cambios. La propuesta número 2, la tarifa base sería la misma. Bajo 2A, en la propuesta, el bono de descuento se reduce a 5% y el aumento efectivo de la tarifa por viaje sería de $2.14. Según esta propuesta, la tarifa de 30 días de la tarjeta ilimitada se elevaría a $125 y el de 7 días subiría a $34. Bajo la propuesta 2B, el bono de descuento se vería eliminada. La tarjeta de 30 días se elevaría a $119 y el de 7 días subiría a $32. La gráfica que demuestra estas diferentes propuestas está incluida en el paquete de información que ustedes ya recibieron. Los cambios al sistema de ferrocarril de Long Island Railroad y Metro North son cambios basados en distancia recorrida, con descuentos de acuerdo al viaje durante la hora pico. Descuentos mensuales o semanales ilimitados son de ida y vuelta, y los billetes de ida y vuelta no reciben descuento. Todos los pasajes son mucho más baratos si se compran en una estación de tren y mucho más caros, por supuesto, si se compran a bordo del tren. Según la propuesta de aumento a la tarifa publicada hoy, la mayoría de los pasajes se incrementarían en un 8,19% a un 9,31%. Y las gráficas demuestran los precios propuestos para las estaciones específicas y los pasajes disponibles. No hay ninguna propuesta para cambiar los actuales periodos de validez de los billetes o la política de reembolso. Para nuestro sistema de puentes y túneles, los aumentos propuestos al peaje mantendrían descuentos existentes para los usuarios del Easy Pass. Peajes para los vehículos que usan Easy Pass en los puentes de Robert Kennedy, Troggs Neck Bridge, Whitestone, Hugh Carey Tunnel y el Queens Midtown Tunnel se elevarían de $5,30 desde los actuales $4,80. Peajes efectivos se elevarían, para los que paguen en efectivo, se elevaría a $7.50 a partir y los del actual de $6.50. Los peajes de ida y vuelta en el Verrazano Narrows Bridge sería el mismo que el anterior, debido a la dirección. Si vienen de Brooklyn bound, de viajes gratuita, los peajes que se cobran en dirección hacia el oeste solamente, y que la tasa de peaje es el doble de la cantidad mencionada anteriormente. Los residentes de Staten Island seguirían recibiendo los descuentos del 55% que reciben corriente. Esto es un sumario de los cambios que estamos proyectando, y estoy disponible para responder a sus preguntas al respecto. Dígame.
Nosotros hemos cubierto varias historias donde se han hecho diferentes propuestas y también se ha aumentado el costo de los precios de las tarifas en el transporte público. La mayoría de los residentes neoyorquinos se quejan de que el costo de vida sigue subiendo y el transporte público, que es mayormente el método de transportación que utilizan para ir y venir y ir a su trabajo, sigue aumentando, y esto le está causando dolor en sus bolsillos. ¿Qué respuesta le tiene usted a esas personas que se quejan de que continúan los aumentos?
Sí, y la pregunta es bastante válida, y es claro que aquí en la autoridad estamos bastante conscientes de que cualquier incremento en las tarifas y los peajes es un incremento que va a afectar a nuestros usuarios. Y por eso que en los últimos meses, de manera decisiva, hemos reducido los costos discrecionales, esos costos que están dentro de nuestro control, para balancear cualquier tipo de incremento que se vaya realizando a los costos no discrecionales. Hicimos énfasis en los costos no discrecionales, que incluyen el costo de la pensión, el costo para el cuidado de salud de los empleados y los jubilados, el costo para el servicio a la deuda que tenemos con los préstamos actuales, y también el costo para el transporte de los discapacitados. Esos costos van a seguir incrementando. Como se vio en la gráfica, y no tengo la gráfica ahora, pero como se vio en la gráfica anterior, estos costos van a incrementar entre el 6.4 al 10% anualmente hasta el 2016. Y para enfrentar esos gastos, hemos reducido y seguimos controlando los gastos discrecionales. Y de esa manera podemos mantener un balance. Pero la realidad es que tenemos que llenar un déficit de casi $503 millones. Y este incremento solo va a realizar 450 millones, que solo representa el 35% de los costos no discrecionales, del aumento de los costos no discrecionales. Así que sí, tienen mucha razón. Es muy difícil incrementar el costo de la tarifa del peaje porque la tasa de inflación y que superan la tasa de inflación. Pero la realidad es que los costos que enfrentan nuestros usuarios son los mismos costos que enfrentamos nosotros de diferentes maneras. Esos costos que están fuera de nuestro control que tenemos que enfrentar en nuestro presupuesto. Dígame.
¿Cuál es la mayor diferencia?
¿Cómo fue? Sí, dígame.
¿Cuál es la mayor diferencia entre estas 4 propuestas que se están presentando hoy?
Las 4 propuestas, como se indicó anteriormente, no importa cuál de las propuestas, la cantidad que se va a recoger va a ser 450 millones. Así que ninguna de las propuestas nos va a dar más recursos que otra. La diferencia es que las propuestas tratan de balancear el impacto que va a tener al grupo de usuarios que usa la mayoría del tipo de tarifas. Por ejemplo, los usuarios que usan la tarifa de 30 días se van a ver impactadas de acuerdo a si va a haber un bono o si no va a haber un bono. Las personas que pagan por viaje van a realizar un incremento de 25 centavos si usan un single ticket, que son $2.25. Y las personas que usan de 7 días, que compran tarifa de 7 días, van a ver un aumento bastante mínimo, no mayor de $1.
Para simplificar las cosas, a la hora de utilizar lo que estás diciendo, básicamente va a estar basado en quién viaja más, quién viaja menos.
Se podría sumar, se puede hacer un sumario de que esa va a ser la conclusión, pero la realidad es que las diferentes alternativas son alternativas que tratan de balancear el impacto a los diferentes grupos de personas que dependen de nuestro sistema de transporte. No queremos que ningún grupo se vea afectado más que otro y en tratar de llegar a ese equilibrio, de establecer ese equilibrio, presentamos las diferentes opciones. Claro está que es una persona o un grupo de personas que solo usan el sistema 1 a 4 veces al mes, son personas que no van a tomar ventaja de los descuentos y tal vez no puedan tomar ventaja de los descuentos porque no tienen el medio de recursos para tomar ventaja de esos descuentos. Pero personas que usan el sistema más de 4 veces al mes, entonces pueden tomar ventaja de los diferentes descuentos y lo que vamos a empezar a hacer es vamos a intensificar nuestro sistema de mercadeo y comunicación con nuestros usuarios para asegurarnos que ellos puedan entender todas las variaciones, las variables de las decisiones en el tipo de tarifa que ellos que vayan a comprar.
Cuando se habla de alzas, queremos escuchar también si hay algún tipo de mejoras en el sistema, en el servicio. ¿Podrían nombrar algunos de ellos?
Sí, bueno, como hicimos en este pasado junio, anunciamos 29,5 millones de mejoras del servicio. Restauramos servicio y mejoramos servicio. Y la razón que pudimos hacer eso es porque internamente dentro de los costos administrativos pudimos reducir una serie de programas y una serie de inversiones que habíamos hecho, una serie de gastos que estábamos haciendo con nuestros programas y nuestros planes discrecionales. Y de esa manera pudimos encontrar dinero para poder restaurar servicio y queremos seguir haciendo eso. Hicimos una encuesta y las encuestas fueron bastante favorables. Reportamos en los resultados de la encuesta en la junta directiva que tuvimos hace un par de semanas y el público en general está apreciando los cambios que se han hecho en el sistema, la limpieza, los cambios del sistema del horario de nuestros trenes que están mucho más a tiempo y también las condiciones de nuestras estaciones.